A father doesn't raise his voice when he's furious. He goes still. And on the day my own son looked me in the eye and told me he wished I'd never been his father, I didn't yell either. I set my fork down, folded my napkin, and gave him exactly what he was asking for. Father's Day, Cherry Creek, Colorado, 72 degrees, blue sky from one edge of the yard to the other. My wife Carol had the good china out on the back deck, like we were entertaining the mayor instead of eating smoked brisket in our own backyard. I own 4-car dealerships across the Denver metro. Built the whole thing out of a single lot with 11 used cars and a hand-painted sign. My own father never had 2 nickels to leave anybody. I put in 28 years of 5:30 mornings so my son Caleb could grow up in a house with a pool instead of a duplex with a window unit that rattled all August. You'd think that buys a man a little something. A little respect, maybe. Turns out what it buys you is a Father's Day where your own boy tells you he wishes he'd never been born into your life. I'd spent the morning the way I spend every Sunday. Up before Carol, coffee on the back steps, watching the sprinklers hit the same 3 hydrangeas in the same order they always do. Carol came out around 8 in her robe, kissed the top of my head and said, "Try not to lecture him today, Walt. Let the boy have one relaxed afternoon." When have I ever lectured that kid? She gave me the look. 31 years of marriage, and that woman has one look that does the work of 1,000 arguments. Yesterday, about the truck payment.
That wasn't a lecture. That was math.
It's Father's Day. Let the math rest for one day. I told her I would. I should have known better than to make a promise about Caleb before Caleb himself had a say in it. Caleb showed up 40 minutes late, of course, with Sasha hanging off his arm like she'd rented him for the afternoon. Pretty girl. Sharp, too, in the way that makes you quietly count your silverware after she leaves. 9 months they'd been together, and in 9 months I'd learned exactly one thing about her. She never once asked me a single question about myself. Not how's business, Walt. Not how'd you build all this. Just watched. Calculated. Like she was pricing the patio furniture. Caleb kissed his mother, clapped me on the shoulder like we were old fraternity brothers. Good spread, Dad. Your mother did it. I just paid for the brisket. Sasha laughed at that half a second too late, like she was translating it from a language she didn't quite speak. The meal went fine at first. Small talk. Carol bragging about her garden club. Me half listening while I watched Caleb check his phone under the table 4 separate times. Sasha kept steering the conversation somewhere warm. Asked Carol about the hydrangeas, asked about our trip to Sedona last spring. Easy stuff. I'll give her that much. She's good at warm. It's just never once aimed at me. At one point she caught me watching her and smiled. You've got a beautiful home, Walt. Caleb talks about growing up here like it's something out of a movie. Wasn't a movie, I said. Was a lot of overtime. Dade, Caleb half laughing, half warning. Let her compliment the house. I'm agreeing with her. It is beautiful. Took me 9 years to pay it off. Something was coming. I could feel it the way you feel weather changing in an old knee. Caleb checked his phone again. Sasha reached over and laid her hand flat against his forearm. Not affectionate, more like she was steadying a table with a wobbly leg. Dessert hit the table, and Caleb cleared his throat the exact way he used to when he was 9, and about to confess he'd put the riding mower through the fence. So, Dad, I wanted to talk to you about something. Sasha and we've got an opportunity. There it is. What kind of opportunity? Real estate. Her friend's group. They're flipping short-term rentals down in Port Aransas. The returns are insane, Dad. Like, actually insane. We just need capital to get into the next round. How much capital? He looked at Sasha. Sasha looked at her wine glass. 210,000, Caleb said. Would need you to cover about 60% of our buy-in. I didn't say anything for a second. Just let the number sit there and breathe. $210,000, I repeated. For a rental flip you heard about through her friend. Not her friend, Dad. An actual group. They've got a track record. Does the group have a name? Bluewater Ridge Partners? Sasha said, jumping in smooth as anything. They've closed 5 properties already this year. My friend Renata's been in since January. She's already seen a return. Renata. Does Renata have a last name? Walt. Carol said quietly, a hand already drifting toward my knee. I'm asking a question. It's a fair question. 5 properties, no LC filing I could find. No license number. Nothing but a name that sounded like it had been built in an afternoon by somebody who'd watched one too many home flipping marathons. I'd already spent the better part of a week quietly making calls, ever since Caleb first mentioned this thing to his mother 2 Sundays back. Carol didn't know I'd checked. Nobody asked me to check. That's just what 29 years of getting burned teaches a man to do before he ever says yes to anything. Caleb, I did some digging on this. His face changed like a light switching off. You did what? He shot a look at his mother, quick, sharp, the kind that says, why would you tell him before I'd even worked out if I was really going through with it? So Carol didn't flinch, just met his eyes steady, like she'd expected that look and had already made her peace with it.
Yes, I did,
I said. Your mother told me 2 Sundays ago, when you first brought it up to her. You didn't think she'd sit on a $210,000 ass, did you? Mom, don't mom her. She's your mother, not your business partner. She was worried, so she told me. That's what happens in this family when somebody's about to make a mistake. The people who love you talk to each other. I made a few calls. I went on. This group isn't registered with the state. No broker's license under that name. No permits filed on either of the 2 addresses you mentioned to your mother. Son, this is every mark of. Here we go again. Let me finish. No, I know how this ends, Dad. I've heard the speech my whole life. You do your calls, you find your reasons, and then you tell me why I can't do the one thing I actually believe in. I'm telling you it's not real, Caleb. That's not an opinion. That's a fact I verified. It's always something with you. His voice cracked up a register, and Carol's hand found my knee under the table. A warning squeeze. Anytime I try to build something, you've got a spreadsheet ready to shoot it down. The business degree wasn't the right school. The engagement with Whitney was too young. Every single time you've got the right answer, and I'm just supposed to sit there and nod like I don't have a brain. I'm trying to protect you from. You're trying to control me. He was standing now. Sasha's hand on his arm, not pulling him back, pushing him forward. I wouldn't understand that part until later. You don't believe in me. You've never believed in me. You think I'm still 12 years old, wrecking the golf cart. And I am so sick of it. That's not fair, I said, and for the first time all afternoon I felt my own voice tighten. I have believed in you since the day you were born. Believing in you and handing you $200,000 without a single document to back it up are 2 different things. See, that's the problem. Everything's a document to you. Everything's a spreadsheet. You can't just trust me. Trust isn't the issue, Caleb. Blue Water Ridge Partners is the issue.
Honey, Carol said, soft pleading. Sit down.
Let's finish dessert and talk about this calmly later. No, Mom. I'm done. He turned back to me and his eyes were wet, and for 1 second, 1 single second, I thought he was going to say something that let us both walk this back instead. You know what? I wish you'd never been my dad. I wish I'd had a father who actually let me live. 26 years. Every recital, every scraped knee, every 3 a.m. run to the ER when he broke his wrist falling off the shed. Every dollar, every ounce of it. And that was the receipt he handed me. The backyard went dead quiet. Even the birds seemed to shut up. Carol's hand tightened on my knee like she could hold the whole thing together through sheer grip strength. Sasha didn't say a word, just watched. And I remember thinking, even then, why isn't she embarrassed? Why does she look like she's waiting for something? I stood up slow, folded my napkin, set it down beside a slice of pie nobody was going to finish now. Then live as if you never had one, I said not loud. Didn't need to be. Some sentences land harder in a whisper than a scream. I watched that one land on my son's face like a slap he hadn't seen coming. Dad. For a second the anger dropped out of him and he sounded 12 years old again. Dad. Wait, I didn't wait. I walked past him, past Sasha's wide eyes, past Carol calling my name in a voice I hadn't heard from her since her own father's funeral. Out through the side gate into the driveway, where the Porsche sat gleaming under the June sun. The car Caleb had been driving for most of the last year. The car still registered under the dealership's name, because I'd never quite gotten around to signing it over, because some part of me kept waiting for him to earn it instead of just take it. Funny how a man can wait 26 years for his son to ask him one real question, and get his answer on Father's Day instead. The one day built to remind you it was all worth it. I got in, turned the key, didn't look back at the house. My phone buzzed before I'd made it 2 blocks. Caleb, bring my car back or I'm calling the cops on my car. I read it twice at a red light on Colorado Boulevard, hands steady on the wheel. Something cold settling into my chest. Not quite anger anymore. Something calmer. Something that had been building a lot longer than one bad dinner. A second text landed right behind it. I mean it, Dad. Not playing, I typed back 4 words and set the phone face down on the passenger seat. It was never yours. The light turned green. I drove past the exit I'd normally take home, past the flagship dealership lit gold in the late afternoon sun, out toward the highway with no real destination. Just distance, just quiet, just the sound of a German engine doing the one thing my own son couldn't manage all day. Running smooth without a fight. The first thing you learn building a business out of nothing is that quiet is the loudest sound in the world when you're the one causing it. I've ended vendor relationships with a phone call shorter than the one my son didn't get from me that night. I drove 2 hours with no destination and ended up, of all places, at the flagship lot on Colorado Boulevard, closed for the holiday. Lights off except the security floods buzzing over rows of cars nobody was buying on a Sunday. I parked the Porsche in its usual spot under the service bay awning and sat there until the automatic lights shut off around me. Just a man in the dark listening to the engine tick as it cooled. 26 years and it came down to 4 words on a phone screen. My car, like I hadn't bought the thing outright. Like his name was on a single piece of paper anywhere. Carol called 8 times before midnight. I let 3 go to voicemail before picking up, because a man needs at least one night to be angry without an audience, even his own wife. Walter James Renner. You get home right now, she said. No hello, straight into it. He's a wreck. Sitting on the porch steps like somebody died. Nobody died, Carol. Somebody got told the truth. You didn't have to say it like that. I said it exactly how I meant it. My voice was calm, too calm, probably, for a man whose son had just wished him out of existence in front of a woman none of us trusted. He wants to live like he never had a father, I said. I'm just giving him the room to try. Silence on the line. Then, quieter, he didn't mean it. I meant it enough to say it in front of Sasha, in front of you. On Father's Day. Real thoughtful timing on his part. Are you coming home tomorrow? I am, I said, and hung up before she could talk me out of the one night of distance I'd earned in 29 years of never taking one. I didn't sleep in the car, for the record. I'm 59, not a fool. Checked into the Renaissance out by the tech center, ordered a club sandwich from room service I never touched, and lay there staring at a ceiling fan that wasn't spinning, running the whole dinner back like game film. A Blue Water Ridge Partners. Renata, no last name. $210,000 for 4 rental flips nobody could produce a single deed for. He's not stupid. My son is not a stupid man, which meant somebody had worked very hard to make him stop thinking like one. By 7 the next morning my phone had 11 new messages. Mostly Caleb. I read them over coffee I didn't taste. Dad, you can't just take my car, this is insane. You know that, right? Mom said you're at a hotel. Real mature. I called the police. They're coming to the house. You want to explain that to them, or should I? Bring it on, son, I thought. Bring every squad car in Arapahoe County if it makes you feel like a man. I drove home around 9, straight into a driveway with an actual patrol car parked in it. Lights off, thank God, but still, a cruiser in my own driveway on a Monday morning, like I was running a chop shop instead of 4 legitimate dealerships with my name on the sign. Caleb was on the porch talking to a young officer, arms crossed, looking like he hadn't slept either. Sasha was nowhere in sight. First smart move she'd made all weekend. There he is, Caleb said when I got out, something ugly flickering across his face, relief and rage fighting for the same real estate. That's my car, officer. That's the car I've been driving for a year. The officer, Delgado, according to his name tag, couldn't have been 30, looked at me, then back at Caleb, with the particular patience of a man who'd already figured out exactly how this was going to go. Sir, is this vehicle registered to you? It's registered to Renner Auto Group, I said, and pulled the registration out of the glove box before he could even ask, because I'd grabbed it the night before knowing exactly where this was headed. I'm Walter Renner. It's a company vehicle. My son drove it as a courtesy while he worked at the dealership. I don't work there anymore, Dad. You quit in April, which is when the courtesy should have ended. I let it slide. My mistake, apparently. Delgado looked over the registration, looked at Caleb, looked at me, and you could watch the whole situation deflate in real time on his face. Son, if the vehicle's titled to the business and your father owns the business, there's no theft here. This is a family matter. I can't do anything with this? He just took it, Caleb said, and his voice cracked in a way that used to break my heart when he was 7, and it was a scraped knee causing it. Now it just made my jaw tighten. In the middle of a fight, he just drove off. Sir, Delgado said gently but firmly, closing his notepad. I understand you're upset, but I can't take a report on a vehicle you don't own. He nodded to me. Professional. A little apologetic, the universal cop look for, "Sorry you had to watch your own kid do this," and walked back to his cruiser. Neither of us said anything until the patrol car turned out of the Col D Sac. Then Caleb looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since he was 16, and I'd caught him lying about how he'd actually dented his first truck. "You humiliated me. You called the cops on your own father over a company car. Caleb, I didn't do that. You did that because you stole a car that isn't yours. I drove my own vehicle away from a table where my own son told me he wished I'd never existed. Forgive me for not sticking around to hand you the keys on my way out." He didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there on the porch, fists opening and closing at his sides. And for 1 second, one single second, I thought maybe this was the bottom. Maybe this was where it turned. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down and whatever color was left in his face drained straight out. "What?" I said. "Nothing." He turned the phone around, more out of instinct than choice, I think. "The way you show somebody a wound before you've even processed your own bleeding." A text from Sasha, "Call me. Renata says closing got pushed. Something's off with the escrow account." There it is. I'd been waiting 3 days for that particular shoe to drop, ever since I made the calls Caleb didn't know about. One to a title company in Nueces County, Texas. One to an old friend who works fraud cases out of the Colorado Attorney General's office. I hadn't told Caleb what I'd found. Hadn't needed to yet. Some lessons cost more when a man has to pay for them himself. "It's probably just paperwork," he said, but his voice had already given up believing it. "Caleb, I need you to hear me. And I need you to actually hear it this time, not just wait for me to stop talking." I stepped closer, and my voice dropped the way it does in a boardroom when the number on the page isn't the one I was promised. "I checked days ago. Blue Water Ridge Partners doesn't exist as a licensed entity in the state of Texas. The properties Sasha mentioned, the ones Renata supposedly closed on, no permits filed, no deeds recorded, nothing. It's a shell. It was always a shell." He went white. Actually white, like the blood was leaving his face on a countdown. "How long have you known that?" "Since before Father's Day. And you didn't tell me. You just let me sit there and you humiliated me at dinner instead of just telling me." "I tried to tell you at dinner, Caleb. That's the whole reason we're standing in this driveway right now. Because I tried, and you told me you wished I'd never been your father for the crime of trying to keep you from doing exactly what you did anyway." A real silence then. The kind with weight to it. The kind you could set a hand on. "Where's Sasha?" I asked, quieter now. "I don't know. She stopped answering an hour ago." Of course she did. I didn't say it out loud. Didn't need to. I watched my son do the math himself, standing there in yesterday's clothes, and I want to tell you it felt like a victory. It didn't. It felt like watching a man drown 3 feet from shore, knowing that if I jumped in too soon, he'd never learn to swim at all. "I'm going inside," I said. "Your mother's worried sick and I haven't slept in a proper bed." His voice cracked again, smaller this time. "What do?" I stopped at the door. Didn't turn around right away. Some part of me, the part that had built 4 dealerships out of one dying lot, wanted to walk back over and fix it the way I'd fixed everything since the day he was born. "You wanted to live like you never had a father," I said instead. "Figure it out like one." 3 days after the police showed up in my driveway, Caleb started calling. I let it ring out. 4 calls the first day, 7 the second. By the 3rd day the calls stopped and the text started instead, long, rambling. The kind a man sends at 2 in the morning when his pride has finally run out of gas. "Dad, I really need to talk to you. The escrow account was fake. Sasha's gone. I think I lost everything. Please just call me back." I didn't. Carol thought I was being cruel. Maybe I was. But I'd spent 26 years catching that boy before he hit the ground, and some part of me, the cold, practical part that built 4 dealerships out of one dying lot, had decided he needed to feel the ground for once before I let him back up. He showed up at the dealership on the 5th day, not the office, the lot. Standing by the service bay in the same rumpled shirt, like he hadn't changed it since Thursday. My sales manager, Dennis, poked his head into my office. "Your son's out there?" "Walt. Been standing by the entrance 20 minutes. Didn't want to come in without asking. There's a first." I made him wait another 10 minutes before I walked out. Petty, maybe. I'd earned a little petty. "Dad." He looked wrecked. Not dramatic wrecked, real wrecked. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes. "I need to talk to you." "You're talking." "Can we? Is there somewhere private?" "This is where I work. Caleb, if you've got something to say it here." Same as anybody else who walks onto this lot with a problem. That landed the way I meant it to. He flinched, but he didn't leave. The money's gone. All of it. 60 grand. My whole savings. And I had to put the rest on a credit card because Sasha said the closing needed a rush fee. How much more? 14,000. He said it so quiet I almost missed it. On top of the 60. $74,000, Dad, and there's nothing. No property, no group, no Renata. Her number's disconnected. Sasha's gone completely. I let the silence sit there. Didn't rush to fill it. A younger version of me would have already been reaching for my wallet. But I'd learned something in the 5 days since that dinner. The silence does more work than I ever could. I don't know what to do, he said, voice cracking wide open. I can't make rent this month. I'm maxed out and Dad, I'm asking you for help. I'm asking you. You told me you wished I'd never been your father. I know. You called the police on me in my own driveway over a car with my company's name on the title. I know, Dad. I know. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. But I'm asking you to help me now.
Please, no,
I said. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language.
What?
No, I'm not bailing you out. I kept my voice level, though it cost me something. You wanted to live like you never had a father. Fathers don't hand their sons $74,000 to clean up a mess a con artist and her boyfriend. Sorry, her F-mark. Made together. You want to live without me. Live without me. Figure out the rent. Figure out the card. Figure out all of it. Dade, please. His voice broke fully now, and he wasn't performing it. I could see that much. I'll lose the apartment. I don't have anywhere to go. Your mother's spare room is still made up, I said. That's the extent of what you're getting from this family right now. A bed and a warm meal, not a check. This is short term, so fix yourself quickly. He went home to Carol that night. I stayed late doing paperwork I didn't need to do. Wasn't ready yet to watch my son sleep in his childhood bedroom like a grown man who'd run out of road. But he had no choice. He moved back in, got served a notice from his old landlord over the broken lease, sold a decent watch, a graduation gift from his grandfather, to cover half a credit card minimum, took a job bussing tables at a steakhouse out in the tech center, because nothing else was hiring fast enough. I'd walk past him some mornings in the kitchen, still in his black work polo, looking like a man who used to believe the world owed him something and had very recently learned otherwise. He didn't ask me for money again. Not once. That mattered to me more than anything he could have said. Carol pushed, of course. He's suffering enough, Walt. How long is this going to go on? Until I believe it, I told her. Not until I forgive him. Until I believe him. 3 weeks in, I found him in the garage on a Sunday night, going through a shoebox of old paperwork. His half-finished business plan for the rental scheme, printouts of texts with Sasha, a legal pad full of numbers that didn't add up, even when he desperately wanted them to. He didn't hear me come in. Keeping that for a reason. He jumped, then set the box down like it was something shameful. I don't know, reminder maybe of what an idiot looks like on paper. $74,000, he said flat, like he'd rehearsed saying it plainly so it wouldn't crack his voice. It cracked anyway. The escrow account, it wasn't even real. It was just Renata's personal checking. There's no Blue Water Ridge. There's no properties.
There's nothing, Dad. It's just gone. I know,
I said. I've known for a week. You could have stopped me. I tried to stop you at my own dinner table, Caleb, and you told me you wished I'd never been born into your life for the effort. He flinched like I'd hit him, but he didn't argue. That, more than anything, told me how far the floor had actually dropped out from under him.
Where's Sasha? Gone.
Ghosted me on everything. I went by her apartment yesterday. Landlord said she broke the lease 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. I let that land. Before you even asked me for the money, she knew. She knew this whole time, and she still had you sit at my table and beg me for 60% of a scam. There it is. The whole shape of it laid out plain in my own son's voice. I'd suspected as much the moment I watched her hand settle on his arm at dinner, steadying him like a table leg, not comforting him like a man she loved. But suspicion and confirmation are two very different meals, and I could see my son was finally choking down the second one. I made some calls, I said. After you told me about the escrow account, I've got a friend, Reggie Marsh, works fraud cases for the Colorado Attorney General's office. We go back to my second dealership before you were born. I asked him to look into Renata Cole and this whole Blue Water operation. Caleb's head came up. It's not her first rodeo. Reggie found 2 other names, 2 other cities. Amarillo 18 months back, and before that somewhere outside Tulsa. Same play every time. Fake real estate group, fake urgency, always aimed at young couples with access to family money they didn't earn themselves. I let that sentence sit a second, watching it land. Your girlfriend wasn't unlucky, Caleb. She was the front door. She gets a finder's fee for every mark she walks in. Whatever color had drained out of Caleb's face on the porch 5 days earlier didn't have anywhere left to go. It just froze there. Sasha was. She was working with Renata the whole time. Reggie's still confirming the finances, but the pattern doesn't lie. Girlfriend meets a man with money behind him. Girlfriend plants the opportunity, applies just enough pressure that the boyfriend goes to daddy for the funding. Money moves. Girlfriend disappears with her cut before anybody thinks to ask where she went. I shrugged, and it wasn't a warm gesture. You weren't the target, son. You were the vehicle. Caleb put his face in his hands. Didn't cry, not exactly, but close enough that I looked away and let him have that much privacy in my own garage. I feel like an idiot, he said, muffled. You're 26, and you fell for somebody who was very, very good at her job. I paused. But I'll say this once, and then I'm done saying it. Every single thing I tried to warn you about, going back years, wasn't me trying to keep you small. It was me trying to keep you from exactly this chair, this conversation. He looked up. Why didn't you just tell me all this at dinner? Why'd you let me humiliate myself calling the cops on you instead of just laying it out? The fair question. Best one he'd asked me in months. Because you weren't going to believe a word I said at that table, Caleb. You'd already decided I was too controlling. Sometimes a man has to let you hit the wall yourself, because he's tried steering you around it for 26 years and you keep grabbing the wheel back. I'm so sorry, Dad. I said hurtful things to you. I lost $74,000 to a woman who was using me from day one. I moved back into my childhood bedroom at 26. I didn't answer right away. Watched him sit there in the garage light, surrounded by the wreckage of his own certainty. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I let myself actually feel it. Not the anger, mostly burned off by then, but something closer to grief. This is my son. This is what it cost him to stop being so sure of everything. You're not getting the $74,000 back, son. I want to be straight with you about that. But you're not adding your name to the list, and you won't be adding any more names to it. Because it's over. He put his face in his hands again, and this time he actually cried. Not the near tears from the office 5 days earlier. The real thing. Shoulders shaking. 3 weeks of bussing tables and sleeping in a room with his high school trophies still on the shelf. Finally breaking loose all at once. I let him. Didn't rush over, didn't say anything soft too early. Some things a man has to finish crying through before comfort means anything. When he settled, I sat down on the step next to him. I've got something to tell you, I said, and I need you to hear it all the way through before you say anything back. He nodded, wiped his face. Back in February, before any of this, I had papers drawn up to transfer the Porsche's title to you outright. Birthday present, 6 months early. It's been sitting in my desk drawer this whole time. I watched that land on him. Watched the shame cut a little deeper before I kept going. There's also a trust. $220,000. Been building since you turned 18. Meant to help you start something real when you were ready. Not a scheme, something legitimate. With a business plan that could survive somebody actually checking the paperwork. You had all that, he said slowly. The whole time I was begging you at the dinner table. The whole time I was living in your house, sleeping under a Little League trophy. I did. Why didn't you just give it to me? Any point in the last 3 weeks, why'd you let me sell Grandpa's watch instead of just... Because a man who hands his son everything the second he cries doesn't teach him anything. Except that crying works, I said. I needed to know you weren't sorry because you got caught, Caleb. I needed to know you were sorry because you understood what you did to yourself, to your mother, to me. 3 weeks of bussing tables and an empty bank account taught you that a lot better than a check from me ever would have. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Just sat there letting it settle. I'm not giving you the trust today, I added before he could get his hopes up wrong. It's still there. It's still yours. But it comes with conditions now. A real business plan, one I get to look at, one that has to survive me picking it apart, the way I should have been allowed to pick apart Blue Water Ridge before you signed away $74,000 to a woman who never once asked me a real question at my own dinner table. That's fair, he said, and meant it in a way he hadn't meant much of anything in 3 weeks. That's more than fair. A man doesn't get his inheritance back the day he stops crying. He gets it back the day he's earned the right to be trusted with it again. He nodded, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he almost smiled. Not because it was easy, because it was honest, and honest was more than he'd had in a long time. Some men win by taking things away. I found out at 59 years old that there's a sharper kind of winning in making a man earn back what you were always going to give him anyway. And watching him learn, the hard and expensive way, that the ground he thought he could stand on without me was never really there at all.